Okay, before we even start.
Already? We literally just sat down.
Yes, already. Because I know how this is going to go. People are going to hear catacombs and immediately.
Lose their minds?
Exactly. So, ground rules. Curiosity is not a crime. Asking questions is not extremism. And being skeptical doesn't mean you believe every wild theory that shows up in your algorithm at 2 a.m.
It just means you don't automatically trust the first explanation someone gives you, especially when that explanation happens to benefit them directly.
Okay, that was sharper than I expected this early.
I've been thinking about this all week.
I can tell. But yeah, skepticism means you don't just accept the official story because it comes with nice letterhead and a tour guide holding a clipboard.
Or a brochure with soft lighting.
Or a gift shop.
Always the gift shop.
So, Paris Catacombs. 6 million skeletons underneath one of the most famous cities in the world. And somehow, when people visit, they're just like, anyway, what's for lunch?
Right? If there were 6 million bodies just sitting above ground in a park somewhere, no one would call that historical context and move on to the next exhibit.
Wait, that's actually. Yeah, that's the thing that bothers me. Underground, it becomes, I don't know, contained, manageable.
Out of sight, out of existential crisis.
Exactly. Okay, so, and I want to be really clear here before anyone starts screaming at their podcast app. We're not just throwing facts out the window. There was a legitimate public health emergency in Paris in the late 1700s.
Oh yeah, that part's completely documented.
Cemeteries were overflowing. Bodies were literally contaminating the water supply. So officials decided to repurpose these old limestone quarries under the city and move all the remains down there. That part? Totally real.
And that's usually where the story just stops.
Which should already make you a little uncomfortable, right? Because they moved the bodies is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence.
Yeah, hold on. We're talking about 6 million bodies, moved over decades, during multiple regime changes, revolutions, complete political chaos.
Multiple times.
And we're supposed to believe that was all handled with, what? Smooth, bureaucratic continuity?
Well, I was going to say, to be fair, record keeping did exist back then.
But did it exist well? Or did it exist technically?
Okay. Yeah, that's actually a really good distinction.
Because there's a difference between we wrote some stuff down and we maintained accurate, complete records through multiple violent government overthrows.
Right. And this wasn't one calm administration doing one organized transfer. This was chaos.
This was French Revolution chaos.
So when people are super confident about the exact numbers and the exact timeline, I mean, I'm not saying they're lying, but I am saying that confidence is doing some assuming.
A lot of assuming.
Okay. So the other thing people get immediately wrong, and this drives me crazy, is the word unmapped.
Oh, God, this one.
People hear unmapped tunnels, and their brain just goes straight to like fantasy novels, secret underground cities, hidden chambers with.
Thrones made of bones, apparently. Maybe some candles. Definitely bad vibes and cloaks.
Which, no. But unmapped usually just means not publicly mapped. Like, engineers absolutely have maps.
Inspection crews absolutely know where the major galleries are.
They just don't release everything to the public.
And somehow that gets translated into, Therefore, those tunnels don't exist, which is convenient?
Especially when you consider that Paris is literally built from that underground stone. The quarries had to exist first. The stone came out of the ground, the city went up. So acting like the tunnels are irrelevant or unknowable is kind of
Insulting?
and suspicious.
You said it, not me.
I mean, you were clearly thinking it.
Always.
Okay, so safety. Because people love to act like this is where the conversation has to end.
Right. Just slap the word dangerous on something, and everyone's supposed to back away slowly with their hands up.
And to be fair, I'm not saying the danger isn't real. Cave-ins happen, flooding happens. Air quality can get genuinely dangerous down there. Those are real risks.
No one here is suggesting we all go frolicking through actively collapsing tunnels for fun.
But here's the thing. Safety explanations aren't applied evenly. That's what bothers me.
Right. If safety were really the only concern, you'd expect, like, controlled access, education, transparent risk assessment,
Instead, curiosity itself gets criminalized.
which doesn't actually make anything safer. It just makes accidents quieter.
And way easier to dismiss later.
Oh, they weren't supposed to be down there anyway, so...
Yeah, this is where the cataphiles come in. And I love this because they completely ruin the nothing ever happens down there narrative.
Urban explorers are very real. They're not cryptids.
They map sections. They document new areas. They've built entire rooms down there.
Which makes the city deeply uncomfortable.
Hidden bars, art installations. There was a fully functional underground cinema that got discovered.
With electricity.
With electricity. And here's where the official story quietly breaks down. Because if the tunnels are supposed to be completely unstable and totally unknown,
Then that shouldn't be possible.
you don't accidentally build a movie theater underground.
You don't accidentally run power to it.
So either the tunnels are navigable and people know more than they're saying, or, I don't know, what's the alternative?
There isn't one. That's the problem.
Okay, now, the occult stuff. Because this always comes up, and it always gets blown completely out of proportion.
Oh, people love this part.
Yes, there have been occult-style gatherings down there. Altars, symbols, ritual-looking setups. That's documented. That happened.
But somehow that immediately turns into the global elite are holding demon summoning sessions under Paris.
Which, no. We don't have evidence of that.
Also, if you've ever been part of any organization with more than 5 people, you know that level of coordination is a fantasy.
Okay, fair.
But here's the thing. Just because there's no evil Illuminati headquarters down there, doesn't mean nothing is happening.
Right. There is evidence of small groups using the space for secretive purposes, which makes sense because,
Because that's what humans do everywhere they think no one's watching.
exactly, hidden spaces don't create monsters. They just give people permission to act differently.
To drop the performance.
So when people ask, are the catacombs hiding something? I don't think the answer is yes or no.
They're hiding layers.
Layers of use, layers of history, layers of narrative that didn't make it into the official version.
And some of those layers make institutions really uncomfortable.
Which is why access stays restricted. Not because there's a dragon guarding treasure down there.
But because there's paperwork, and liability, and questions no one wants to answer under oath.
You know what's funny? Not funny, haha, but funny weird.
My favorite kind.
How fast people want this to be clean. Like, either it's completely fake and there's nothing to see, or it's completely true and there's a massive conspiracy. No middle ground.
Yeah, the internet doesn't do nuance. Nuance doesn't get clicks.
But underground history exists in nuance. Incomplete records, different uses across different time periods, purposes that changed every generation.
And every generation adds its own layer of mythology on top.
Which is important because myths don't just appear out of nowhere. They grow out of unanswered questions.
And silences.
Right. So when you look at something like secret societies, there's no solid evidence that groups like the Illuminati or the Freemasons were running headquarters down there. That matters. We should be clear about that.
Right. And honestly, if they were, someone would have leaked it by now, out of pure spite.
Wouldn't the rumors be a form of leaked info, though?
It is possible.
But here's the part people skip over. Just because that specific version isn't supported doesn't mean secrecy itself isn't real.
Governments and cities absolutely restrict underground access. That's not controversial.
What's controversial is pretending that restriction doesn't shape the narrative.
When you control access, you control information.
And when you control information, you control what becomes truth by default.
Even if it's incomplete.
This is where I think people get defensive, because questioning official stories feels like questioning stability.
Or their own intelligence. Like, oh, you don't just believe what you're told. What's wrong with you?
Right. Which is why people rush to say, that's been debunked.
But debunked often just means an authority explained it in a way that benefits them, so we all agreed to move on.
It doesn't mean every alternative explanation is correct.
But it also doesn't mean the conversation should be over.
And underground spaces are perfect for this kind of thing, because you can't easily verify them yourself. You can't just walk down there and check. You can't crowdsource reality.
So whoever controls access controls the story.
Okay, let's talk about the idea of this vast, endless, completely unknown labyrinth for a second.
Oh, the one with the forgotten cities and the dramatic echoes.
That one. That version is exaggerated. Engineers have surveyed large portions of the underground network.
Structurally, though, they care about collapse zones and load-bearing walls, not ancient vibes.
Right. So no, there's no evidence of a completely unknown second city underneath Paris.
But there is evidence of sections that are poorly documented publicly, which is somehow way creepier.
Because it means the unknown isn't mystical. It's administrative.
Which is honestly the least comforting flavor of unknown.
We have the information, we're just not sharing it, is so much worse than we don't know.
Always.
Another thing people conflate, danger with mystery. If something's dangerous, people automatically assume it must be hiding something else.
Right, like danger isn't enough on its own.
Structural danger is very real. Collapses, flooding, sections with weak supports. Municipal reports confirm they're constantly doing reinforcement work.
Which then gets interpreted as, why are they fixing something we're not allowed to see?
And look, that question alone doesn't prove a conspiracy.
But it does prove the story isn't finished.
Because if everything was really settled and boring and fully understood,
no one would care who went down there.
and yet curiosity gets punished. Not discouraged, punished. Fines, arrests, confiscated equipment.
Which fuels the mythology even more.
Silence always does.
You know what else is interesting? This pattern isn't unique to Paris.
Oh God, no. Rome, Naples, Edinburgh, Odessa.
Different cultures, same playbook. Seal it. Label it unsafe. Control the narrative.
Then, like 50 years later, romanticize it.
Preferably after everyone involved is long dead and can't argue with your version.
The Roman catacombs are a perfect example of this. Popular culture has this whole narrative about early Christians hiding and worshiping in the catacombs during persecution.
Which feels emotionally true, right? Like it has that dramatic weight to it.
But archaeology shows they were primarily burial spaces, purpose-built cemeteries, not secret churches.
And the hiding in tunnels myth grew later, because it served a purpose.
It reinforced religious authority, martyrdom narratives, identity.
Which doesn't make it evil, it just makes it useful.
That's the key distinction. Stories don't have to be malicious to be strategic.
And once a story works, it sticks around forever.
So when people ask, are the catacombs hiding something?
The honest answer is, they're hiding layers.
Of use, of history, of narrative.
And some of those layers make people uncomfortable, especially the part where the official story isn't a lie,
It's just not complete.
which is somehow more unsettling.
You know what always gets me about how people discuss catacombs?
What?
They act like they were built for one purpose, used for that purpose, and then just frozen in time forever.
Yeah, as if humans have ever done anything once and then left it alone. We're like the least leave it alone species on the planet.
Right? Especially with limited space and infinite problems.
You dig a hole. Someone else finds it useful. Then someone else finds it useful differently. That's not conspiracy. That's just urban evolution.
Which is why the one true explanation mindset doesn't work here. The catacombs weren't just cemeteries. They weren't just quarries. They weren't just storage.
They were all those things at different times. Sometimes at the same time.
Which makes historians very uncomfortable.
Because history likes categories.
And reality likes overlap.
And overlap is where things get messy.
That overlap is where resistance movements come in. During World War II, parts of the Paris underground were definitely used by the French resistance. Meetings, moving people, hiding equipment. That's not speculative.
And I love how casually that gets mentioned in history books. Like, oh yeah, by the way, they ran resistance operations underground for years. Anyway, moving on.
Right? Especially when you consider that German forces were also using underground spaces.
Which means both sides understood the strategic value perfectly.
So when people today point out that underground spaces could be used strategically, and everyone acts like that's this wild, paranoid fantasy.
It's kind of insulting to history?
Yeah, the issue isn't plausibility. We know it's plausible.
The issue is permission. Who's allowed to say it out loud?
Exactly. Okay, another thing people misunderstand. Scale. 200 kilometers of tunnels doesn't mean 200 kilometers of mystery.
But it also doesn't mean 200 kilometers of nothing.
Right. Most of it is probably boring. Structural supports, reinforcement walls, collapsed sections that lead nowhere.
But boring doesn't mean irrelevant.
It just means it doesn't make good YouTube thumbnails.
And the boring parts are often where the real questions live, because nobody argues about the obvious stuff.
Like utility corridors, maintenance tunnels, monitoring stations.
Things that sound completely mundane, until you stop and think about how much access they imply.
And how much trust is required for the public to just accept, don't worry about it.
Which is a hard sell in everything right now.
Fair.
This is where I think people confuse skepticism with paranoia.
Oh, that's a big one.
Skepticism is asking questions. Paranoia is answering them too quickly with the worst possible option.
Right. Saying there's no underground elite city is reasonable. Saying there's nothing worth questioning underground at all is not.
Because even official sources acknowledge restricted use. They just stop short of explaining why the restriction has to be absolute.
Which brings us back to enforcement. Fines, arrests, confiscated gear.
If the goal were actually safety, you'd think education would be part of the strategy.
Instead, enforcement creates more mystery.
Which is the opposite of what you'd want if you were trying to calm people down.
Exactly. Fear grows in silence.
And silence grows where access is blocked.
Let's talk about personal accounts for a second. Because this is where things get weird.
Oh, the fastest way to get dismissed as unreliable.
Right. Explorers describe getting disoriented, losing time, hearing things that shouldn't be there.
And immediately everyone splits into two camps. It's paranormal, or they're lying.
But there are completely grounded explanations. Darkness affects your brain. Acoustics underground are bizarre. Stress does weird things to perception. Carbon dioxide pockets can literally make you hallucinate.
Your brain is not designed for endless stone corridors full of bones. Shocking revelation, I know.
But acknowledging those explanations doesn't mean we have to mock the experience.
It just means taking it seriously without sensationalizing it.
Which is where a lot of media fails. Because you had a panic response in an extreme environment doesn't sell like portal to hell.
But dismissing everything as imagination is just as lazy.
Yeah, the human nervous system is real, and it does strange things when pushed.
Which, again, brings us back to responsibility. If people are going down there anyway,
Pretending it doesn't happen isn't a solution.
it's a liability for everyone.
All right, we should probably pause for a second here.
Are we spiraling?
A little. If you're still with us and you need fuel for this,
This is sponsored by Dubby. Clean energy, no sugar crash. Doesn't make you feel like you're dying at 3 p.m.
or 3 a.m.
Of course.
For those of you needing a boost, try our discount code StarLitHeart for 10% off your first order.
That's Starlit Heart. StarLitheart. One word.
If you're going to question reality,
At least, do it awake.
okay, back to it.
You know what else doesn't get talked about enough? How cities manage embarrassment.
Oh, that's a huge one.
Admitting you don't fully control what's underneath your city. That's not a good look.
Especially when your city is a global symbol. Paris is romance, art, culture.
Not bones, tunnels, and structural anxiety.
So the underground gets minimized in the public narrative.
It's old. It's dangerous. It's boring.
3 phrases that all mean, please don't look closer.
Because looking closer invites follow-up questions.
And follow-up questions invite accountability.
Everyone's least favorite genre.
This is why I push back when people say, why do you even care?
Because curiosity is how things get safer. It's how stories get corrected.
And how power stays slightly uncomfortable.
which might be the real reason underground spaces stay off limits. Not because they're dangerous.
But because they're unsupervised narratives.
And unsupervised narratives scare institutions almost as much as skeletons do.
There's another layer people rarely think about. Time.
Ah, yes. The thing humans are terrible at accounting for.
Most people imagine catacombs as these frozen snapshots. Built once, used once, sealed forever.
When in reality, time underground doesn't work the way it does up here. Above ground, things get demolished, renovated, rebranded.
But underground, things just accumulate.
New uses stack on top of old ones. A quarry becomes a passage becomes storage. Storage becomes shelter. Shelter becomes a meeting space. Meeting space becomes myth.
And then centuries later, someone asks, why does this exist? And the answer is never just one sentence.
It's layers on layers on layers.
Which is where a lot of official explanations fall short. They explain origin, but not evolution.
Right. Like with wartime use, it's acknowledged but minimized. Which is wild, considering resistance movements literally thrived on secrecy.
Using tunnels wasn't some clever trick. It was obvious.
If you want to move unseen, you go where people aren't looking.
And once something proves useful during a crisis,
It rarely gets forgotten afterward.
that's an uncomfortable idea because it implies continuity.
And continuity implies planning.
Not necessarily malicious planning.
Just institutional memory.
Which brings us back to mapping. Maps are not neutral documents.
They show what the mapmaker wants shown.
And they hide what's inconvenient. Even today, multiple versions of maps can exist simultaneously.
Public-facing, internal, operational.
That doesn't require a conspiracy. It just requires a clipboard.
But once people realize that, trust becomes conditional.
Which is why phrases like fully explored trigger skepticism. Fully explored by who? And for what purpose?
Structural safety doesn't answer historical curiosity.
Right. Knowing a tunnel won't collapse doesn't tell you who used it last year, or 50 years ago, or why it's sealed now.
That's where people start filling in gaps.
Sometimes responsibly, sometimes with YouTube thumbnails.
And institutions respond by dismissing everything equally.
Which is the fastest way to lose credibility. Because when you lump reasonable questions in with absurd ones,
You make the absurd ones louder.
that's why debunking culture backfires. It treats curiosity like contamination.
And it assumes authority equals accuracy.
Which history has repeatedly disproven.
Repeatedly and enthusiastically.
Another thing that gets glossed over: scale versus access. Large systems don't need to be mysterious to be inaccessible.
They just need enough barriers.
Physical barriers, legal barriers, social barriers.
And ridicule. Never underestimate ridicule.
If asking questions makes you look foolish, most people will stop asking.
Which is way more effective than force, because it's self-enforcing.
That's why stories about catacombs swing so wildly. From nothing to see here to everything is hidden.
When the truth is usually uncomfortable and boring and incomplete.
Which is the least satisfying answer.
But also the most honest.
You know what I think unsettles people the most?
That there might not be a final answer.
Yes. That some places are layered enough that certainty is unrealistic.
which means curiosity has to coexist with uncertainty.
And humans hate that.
We want closure, preferably wrapped in authority.
But underground spaces resist closure.
They're literally beneath the surface narrative.
So when people ask whether the catacombs are hiding something, the honest answer is still no.
They're not hiding one big thing.
They're hiding everything that didn't fit cleanly into the official history.
Everything that wasn't worth explaining until suddenly it was.
Which makes them mirrors for how societies handle discomfort.
And how quickly we trade curiosity for reassurance.
Or for spectacle.
And that tension isn't going anywhere. Because as long as there are locked doors, people will wonder what's behind them.
Something else that keeps coming up for me. A lot of people think rebellion has to be loud.
Oh yeah. Fire, noise, slogans, dramatic speeches.
But most real rebellion is quiet. It's asking questions you're not supposed to ask. Going places you're not supposed to go. Or just refusing to internalize, that's just how it is.
That sentence has done more damage than most weapons.
That's dramatic.
Still accurate.
Underground spaces attract that kind of quiet rebellion because they're low visibility. You don't need an audience.
Which is why it's genuine. If people were exploring catacombs for applause, they'd pick literally anywhere else.
They do it because something about off-limits feels unfinished.
Like an unanswered question with a lock on it.
And that feeling doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from living in systems that close loops prematurely.
Which makes curiosity feel subversive when it shouldn't be.
You know what else underground spaces do? They give people perspective.
How so?
Standing under a city changes how you think about it. It stops feeling permanent.
You realize how thin everything is. Roads, buildings, authority.
And that can be destabilizing, which is probably why access is controlled. It's not just physical safety.
It's existential safety.
Letting people see the layers invites questions like, how long has this been here? Who decided this? And why wasn't I told?
And those questions don't stay underground. They follow you back up.
Which makes them dangerous to systems that rely on routine.
Routine hates reflection.
That's why myths don't bother authorities as much as curiosity does. Myths can be dismissed.
Curiosity has to be answered or suppressed.
And suppression always leaves residue. Rumors, resentment, distrust.
Which feeds right back into conspiracy culture. It's a feedback loop.
And catacombs are perfect amplifiers for it. They're physical proof that not everything is explained.
Or explainable. At least not neatly.
That's why I don't think these conversations ever really end. They just change tone.
Sometimes it's fear. Sometimes awe. Sometimes humor. Sometimes defiance.
But underneath all of it,
It's the same impulse.
to understand what we're standing on.
And what we're standing over.
You know what's funny? We talk about catacombs like they're an old problem.
Yeah, like secrecy retired with stone and torchlight.
But we didn't stop building underground. We just switched materials.
Oh, where are you going with this?
Digital spaces are basically modern catacombs.
Okay, that comparison is dangerous.
Tell me I'm wrong, though.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying someone just got very uncomfortable listening to that.
Good. Think about it. Archives, databases, server farms. Invisible to most people. Critical to everything.
Restricted access. Authorized users only.
And when something disappears digitally, it's even harder to prove it was ever there.
At least bones leave evidence. Data just vanishes.
Which creates a different kind of mythology. Lost files, erased records, shadow bans.
People arguing about whether something even existed at all.
Just like underground chambers no one's allowed to see. Same pattern, different substrate.
And the same reactions. Oh, that's been looked into. Nothing unusual found. Move along.
Which always raises the same question. Who looked? And what did they decide didn't matter?
And why wasn't that decision public?
Digital catacombs are even harder to explore. No flashlight, no map, just permissions and silence.
Which is why people get so heated about access online. It's not about convenience.
It's about agency. Same as underground.
What's wild is how quickly people will defend systems they can't see.
Because imagining chaos is scarier than trusting authority, even when authority has a track record.
Especially then.
You see the same arguments. They wouldn't do that. They have safeguards. Someone would notice.
And history just
Very loudly.
That's why I don't think curiosity is the problem. It's a pressure release valve.
Suppress it too hard and it explodes somewhere else.
That's when theories get wilder, because they're compensating for missing information.
Which brings us back to catacombs. They're a reminder that burying things doesn't resolve them.
It just delays the conversation, sometimes for centuries.
Sometimes until someone breaks a lock.
And when that happens, people don't ask, "What did we miss?" They ask, "Why were you down there?"
Which tells you everything. The question isn't about truth.
It's about permission, and who gets to grant it.
That dynamic didn't stay underground. It followed us online.
Same instincts, same fear, different tunnels.
And way fewer bones.
Debatable.
Okay, fair. You know what the underground and the digital world have in common? They both mess with memory.
Oh, that's a loaded sentence.
But think about it. If something disappears underground, most people never knew it existed in the first place.
And if something disappears digitally, people start arguing whether it was ever real.
Memory becomes negotiable.
Which is terrifying if you think about it for more than 10 seconds.
And people don't think about it. They outsource remembering.
To institutions, to archives, to platforms.
Which have terms of service.
That can change.
That's why catacombs aren't just about death. They're about what gets remembered and what gets simplified.
6 million bodies just become a number.
Yeah, not 6 million.
Stories, lives, names, just 6 million.
Which is easier to handle emotionally. You can't process 6 million individual tragedies, so your brain just...
Turns it into a statistic.
And once it's a statistic, you can walk past it, put it on a tour, sell tickets.
Which is deeply weird when you think about it for more than 5 seconds.
Most things are. That's why myths come back. They try to re-add the human part that got flattened out.
Even if they're not accurate, they at least feel, I don't know, complete?
Yeah, and we crave that. Loose ends make people anxious.
That's why conspiracy theories can feel more satisfying than actual research. Research ends with, "We need more data, further study required."
And conspiracies end with, "Now it all makes sense."
Even when it doesn't.
Right, but that doesn't mean people are dumb. It just means uncertainty is uncomfortable, and underground spaces are basically made of uncertainty.
No windows, no sun. You lose track of time.
Direction stops making sense after a while.
Which is unsettling. Not because of ghosts or whatever, but because of the ambiguity.
And ambiguity makes people... Defensive isn't the right word, but
No, it is. You see it whenever someone questions records. Those are fine. Good enough. Why does it even matter?
those aren't answers. Those are...
Emotional shields.
Yeah. And reassurance doesn't hold up to scrutiny, so the whole thing just stays locked down.
Which is probably the point.
Forgetting is such a convenient tool, because it doesn't look like control.
It just looks like time passing. Which everyone accepts.
Until someone digs something up and suddenly everyone's like, why are you bringing this up now?
As if the problem expires if you ignore it long enough.
Unresolved things don't resolve themselves. They just sit there.
Waiting.
You know what else bothers me? People act like catacombs were built, used once, and then just frozen.
Yeah, like humans have ever done that with anything.
Exactly. You dig a hole, someone finds it useful, then someone else finds it useful in a completely different way.
And underground, it just keeps stacking. Above ground, you can demolish stuff and start over, but below, it accumulates.
Quarry becomes a passage. Passage becomes storage.
Storage becomes shelter. Shelter becomes a place people meet. And then that becomes a story. And then
Okay, slow down, you're spiraling.
history spirals.
Fair. But yeah, that's why the one explanation thing doesn't work. These spaces got reused for centuries.
Which historians hate because they want everything in neat little boxes.
And reality's messier than that.
Always.
Like, during World War II, the resistance absolutely used parts of the tunnels. Meetings, hiding people, moving equipment.
And that always gets mentioned like this tiny side note. Oh, by the way, underground resistance operations. Cool, moving on.
Right? When that actually proves these aren't just theoretical spaces.
They're proven strategic assets that both sides understood perfectly well.
And things that prove useful during crisis don't get forgotten.
They get remembered, quietly.
Which makes people nervous because it implies...
Continuity. That maybe the knowledge didn't just disappear.
Not malicious necessarily, just institutional memory.
Which is somehow scarier to people than an actual conspiracy.
Because it's mundane, and the mundane is harder to dismiss.
Wait. Hold on.
What?
Didn't we already talk about this?
About what?
I feel like we're circling back. The whole stories get invented thing. We covered that earlier, didn't we?
Maybe? I don't know. I've been doing so much reading and prep work on this. It all feels familiar to me at this point.
You know, at least one of us is supposed to keep track of where we are in the conversation. Preferably before our listeners start chucking bricks at their devices. Or worse, bones.
Hey, you're just as at fault here as I am.
Am I though? You know I don't do well with following anything linear.
That you don't. I mean, do you want to check the recording?
No, I'm not scrubbing through an hour of audio.
It's not an hour.
Close enough. Let's just move on.
Okay, so what haven't we talked about?
What happens after? After you get curious.
After?
Yeah, like you start asking questions. Maybe you go down there, or you dig into archives or whatever. And then... what? What happens to you?
Oh. Huh. That's actually interesting because I don't think people talk about that part.
The shift from "I'm curious" to "Oh God, I can't unknow this."
Yeah, once you start seeing how controlled things are, or how many gaps there are in the story,
You can't go back to just nodding along.
it changes your baseline. Not in a paranoid way.
Well, sometimes in a paranoid way.
Okay, sometimes. But mostly in a, wait, let me think about that way.
Which sounds small, but it's actually huge. Because most systems need you to not pause.
They need momentum. People just accepting and moving forward.
And spaces like this, underground, hidden, restricted, they force you to pause.
You can't rush through ambiguity.
You have to sit in it.
Which is why I think a lot of people avoid all of this. Not because they think we're lying.
But because they know if they pull that thread, other stuff unravels.
And that's exhausting.
It really is.
So when people say, why do you care so much about some tunnels in Paris?
It's not about the tunnels.
It's about learning to recognize when you're being managed instead of informed.
And that skill transfers to everything.
Everything.
You know what I wish more people understood? The difference between skepticism and cynicism.
Ooh, yeah.
Cynicism is, everyone's lying, nothing matters, it's all rigged, whatever.
Which is just giving up with attitude.
Right. But skepticism is, I don't know yet, show me more. That doesn't add up. Explain it again.
It's active.
Yeah, and it doesn't assume the worst.
It just doesn't assume the best either.
Which pisses people off who want clear teams.
Because reality doesn't work like that. Something can be both helpful and secretive, accurate and incomplete.
Someone can genuinely believe what they're telling you and still be completely wrong.
And if they're not lying,
You can't just dismiss them.
but you also can't blindly trust them,
So you're stuck actually thinking.
which people hate.
They really do.
Can I bring something back up for a second?
Yeah,
This idea that catacombs are basically what gets postponed. Every society has stuff it doesn't want to deal with. Death, waste, mistakes.
histories that don't fit the brand.
Right. And the move is always the same. Put it underground, seal it, we'll deal with it later.
Except later never actually comes.
Or it comes as a disaster. Something breaks, contaminates, forces its way back up,
And then everyone acts shocked.
when it was always there. Literally right underneath.
This isn't just infrastructure, though.
What do you mean?
Cultural stuff gets buried the same way. Not physically, but conversationally. We don't talk about that. That's in the past. Why bring it up?
And then it sits there, shaping everything from below.
Until someone trips over it, or digs it up on purpose.
And the response is never, good point, let's address it.
It's, why are you causing problems?
As if noticing created the problem.
When ignoring it created the problem.
Yeah. And catacombs just make that pattern visible in a way you can't ignore.
Literally visible.
So, where does that leave us?
What do you mean?
With all of this, where does it leave you?
Honestly, with more questions than I started with.
Is that bad?
No, just uncomfortable.
Good. If this made you feel settled and reassured, we probably screwed up.
Because the catacombs aren't settled.
And neither is the question of who controls what, or why, or what it means.
So if you're listening and you feel uneasy,
Good. Sit with it.
ask your own questions.
Notice when you get shut down.
Notice who benefits when you stop asking.
That's not paranoia.
That's just paying attention.
I think that's it. That's where we leave it.
No big conclusion.
Nope. The catacombs are still there. The questions are still there. And we're still here, wondering.
If you made it this far, thanks for sitting in the weird with us.
Drop a comment. Tell us what we missed. What made you think?
Or tell us we're full of it. We'll probably read it.
This has been Everything's an Illusion.
Stay curious.
Stay skeptical.
Maybe stay out of unauthorized tunnels. Or don't. Not our call.
Just bring a flashlight if you go.
And maybe a friend who knows you're down there. Until next time.